Okay, today we're going to talk about solving proportions that are quadratic equations. So it's very similar to solving regular proportions, only this time all of our answers are going to be quadratics. So please make sure that you take out a piece of paper if you chose not to print out the notes. So to solve a proportion that is a quadratic equation, meaning it has an x squared, you're going to make sure you have two fractions. You may have to put something over 1 to make sure that you have those two fractions. You're going to cross multiply, then you're going to make the equation equal to 0 by using addition or subtraction to move everything to one side. Make sure when you do that your x squared term is always positive. Then it becomes your choice. You can factor it if you love factoring. If you hate factoring, you can always go to the quadratic formula. You use this if you cannot factor as well. And if you don't like factoring or the quadratic formula, you're more than welcome to do completing the square. So if we look at the first example, the first thing I notice is I don't have two equal fractions. So I'm going to put this over 1 so that I can cross multiply. When I go this way, 2 times 1 is 2. When I go the other way, since it's one term times two terms, I suggest that you write it like this so that you don't make a mistake when multiplying. Now we're going to distribute. This becomes x squared, and this becomes plus x equals, carry down the 2. Now I want to make sure my equation is equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. Notice I put it at the end to make sure that it's in standard form. And now I have a choice. Can I factor it? Are there two numbers that add to 1 and multiply to negative 2? Well, I could say negative 1 times 2, because that would add to 1 and multiply to negative 2. So my factors become x minus 1 and x plus 2. Again, because I'm solving, now I have to set each equation equal to 0. If I add 1, I get x equals 1 here. And here, if I set this factor equal to 0, I get x equals negative 2. So my answers are 1 and negative 2. The only additional thing that you should do is you want to check these answers. If I plug a 1 into the denominator here for the x, make sure I don't get a 0. And if I plug the negative 2 in here for x, make sure you don't get a 0. If you get a 0 in the denominator of any fraction, it's undefined, so it gets rejected. And the other thing that you want to know is if you're not good at factoring, if you don't like doing this, you could have done the quadratic formula and you would have ended up with the same answers. Second example. Again, the first thing I want to do, because I have two equal fractions, is cross multiply. I'm going to multiply this, so x minus 1 times x plus 2, and then I'm going to multiply these, so I'm cross multiplying, equals 4. If you look at the red, since you're multiplying two binomials, some of you might want to use the box method to multiply. So now I get x squared, 2x, negative 1x, negative 2, x squared plus x minus 2. And then carry down that 4. Again, I have an x squared, so I'm going to move the 4 over. Here I get x squared plus x minus 6 equals 0. I know there's a 1 there. I personally think factoring is quicker and easier. If you do not like to factor at this point, you're more than welcome to either complete the square or use the quadratic formula. So factors of negative 6 that add to 1, I know I have 1 and 6, 2 and 3. Since that's negative, one of these has to be negative. This is the pair that gives me 1. So x minus 2, x plus 3. We're going to t-chart it and solve both of them. So here I get x equals 2. And here, if I finish, I get x equals negative 3. Again, final step, just plug in this answer in the denominator. 2 minus 1 is 1, so that gives you a valid fraction. Plug this into the denominator up here. Negative 3 minus 1, that gives you negative 4. As long as it's not 0, your answers are good. Next example. Again, here I don't have two equal fractions, so the first thing I'm going to do is put that over 1. Then I'm going to cross multiply. So if I go this way, I get 24. And if I go the other way, again, I would write it out like this so that you make less of a mistake when you now distribute. So this becomes x squared minus 2x, and this is equals 24. Because I have an x squared, I want my equation equal to 0, so I'm going to move the 24 to the other side. Again, I personally think factoring is quicker if you're good at it. If you're not, you're more than welcome to use the quadratic formula. So my factors of 24 are 1 and 24, 2 and 12, 3 and 8, 4 and 6. Since this is a negative 24, I know one of my factors has to be negative. That gives me 23, that gives me 10, that gives me 5, that gives me 2. I want negative 2, so I'm going to swap these last signs. These are my factors. So x plus 4, x minus 6. I'm going to solve each of my factors. I get negative 4 here. I get 6 here. Again, check your two answers in the denominator of the original problem. Over here, negative 4 minus 2, that gives me negative 6. And 6 minus 2 gives me 4. Since I don't get a 0 in the denominator, both of these are valid answers. Next one. First thing I'm going to do, since they're both fractions, is cross multiply. So I have 2x minus 1 and x minus 1. If I go the other way, I get equals 4. For those of you that do not like to double distribute, do the box off to the side. 2x minus 1, x minus 1. This becomes 2x squared minus 1x minus 2x plus 1. So 2x squared minus 3x plus 1. Copy down your 4. Now I'm going to move my 4 over so that my equation is in standard form. Now, again, I personally always like to try to factor first. Since there's a number here, we would do the headphones. So here, I get 2 times negative 3, that's negative 6. Factors of negative 6 are 1 and 6 and 2 and 3. One of them has to be negative. Since I cannot get anything to add to that negative 3, I cannot factor. So I'm going to go with the quadratic formula. So off to the side, I'm going to list my A, my B, and my C. This is 2, this is negative 3, this is negative 3. I'm going to write the formula down. And again, I'm using the formula because we use that when we cannot factor something. And this does not factor. I'm going to plug in my numbers. My B value is negative 3, plus or minus negative 3 squared minus 4, 2, negative 3, over 2, 2. Hang on while I move this up. Now I'm going to simplify. 2 negatives give me a positive. Again, for those of you that hate to actually do math and you want to use your calculator, you can cheat. Hang on 1 second. I'm going to end up with... Here we're going to get 33 over 4. I cannot simplify a radical 33, so this becomes my answer. And the last one, again, the first thing I'm going to do is cross multiply. Since I'm multiplying one term times 2 terms, I would write it out with the parentheses. Then we're going this way. So c times c minus 1. We're going to distribute. C times 4c is 4c squared. This becomes plus 2c. Here I get c squared minus 1c. I'm going to move everything over to one side so that I'm in standard form. If you need to, put a 1 there. 4c squared minus 1c squared is 3c squared plus 2c equals, copy this down, negative 1c. I'm going to move this to this side. Now I have 3c squared plus 3c equals 0. Again, personally, I think factoring is easier. If I look at these two terms, I have 3c goes into both. I'm left with c plus 1. That's how I factored. This is a GCF. GCF. I'm going to t-chart it. So I get 3c equals 0. If I divide both sides by 3, if I have no money and I share it with 3 friends, we each get nothing. And over here, c plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to minus 1. I get c equals negative 1. Again, double check your two answers in the denominator. If c is 0 in the first denominator, I get a good answer. If c is 0 in the second denominator, I still get a number other than 0. Also, if c is negative 1, both denominators give me a number other than 0, so they're good. And for those of you that hate factoring and you don't want to do this, if you wanted to do the quadratic formula, if you were doing that, your a would be 3, your b would be 3, and your c, which is the number by itself, technically that's plus 0, so your c value would be 0. If you did the quadratic formula and you plug them in, when you did all the work, you would still end up with c equals 0 and c equals negative 1. So again, it's your choice if you like to factor or if you'd rather use the quadratic formula or even if you'd rather complete the square. Again, any questions, please make sure that you email me or ask me next time you see me in class.